Thanks to you on the channel here, become a member or over on Subscribe. Thanks to everyone who has joined over there. So our Crumb, when the left leaves you behind. This is an insanely ridiculous story, and the most absurd aspect is that everyone is pretending to take all this seriously. I mean, not me, of course. I mean, I think the best thing you can do for these people is lampoon them, parody them. Don't take anything they say seriously, and just look at them like, are you children or adults? Because you're acting like children in adult bodies. But all the pretentious artists involved are taking this very seriously. The article is, well, the original article is from Bleeding Fool, and it links to this article, and then the University of Michigan article, which is insanely long. Let me click so you can see some of the microaggression article, which Teitelbaum pretends to take seriously. She unironically mentions microaggressions, which I micro care about. So in the original article, they're talking about subversive art and discussing how you can't do it anymore because the woke commie kids will simply try to get you fired, the new modern day Bolshevik brown shirts. They're talking about the loss of underground subversive art because the politically correct woke commissars will just destroy your life. And in the article, he says, let me get to this. Will this zoom in? No. Hold on. God damn it. He says, still something has been lost in the move to the main stage, as Bag puts it in Raw, Weirdo, and Beyond, the magazines of the 80s. You can't fly, I think the 80s. You can't fly under the radar anymore. Bag also makes a telling comment that when comics were underground, it wasn't something that any creator was going to lose a college professorship over. In the age of the woke, that has changed. In the fall of 2020, for example, Phoebe Glockner, professor, the author of the graphic novel The Diary of a Teenage Girl and associate professor at the University of Michigan, was accused of curriculum-based trauma by students, partially because she showed them Crumb's work. The art itself might not have been offensive, but Crumb and his refusal to accept woke ideology were offensive. Talking to the New York Times, Crumb refers disdainfully to the wokies. The whole identity politics and BLT stuff, he says, I agree with it. These people need an equal share. I can't argue with that. But then people get kind of intolerant about anything that could be seen as triggering, essentially calling them what they are, snowflakes. The establishment man Crumb and others battled in the 1960s is now the arms-folded college scold. Yeah, marching through Berkeley in the 50s and 60s, marching for free speech, right? And now now they have control. They're marching for censorship. It's like, you never really should have trusted the communists in the first place. Yeah, what a mistake that was. So in an article written by a communist woman, Teitelbaum, who's writing it in an effort to try to... she's trying to destroy this art professor's life. But the weird thing is that the professor has tenure and didn't violate any rules. Phoebe Glockner. And some of the art in question is by R. Crumb, who in his day would have been a hippy-dippy as he portrayed himself in his comics. I was not a fan of his style of art, but I also don't need a trigger warning because I'm an adult. He was the counterculture, but keep in mind back then, they, or most of them, were fighting for free speech. Now, he recently gives this interview where he says, well, things are getting a bit weird with the wokies, getting intolerant when they claim they're triggered, which of course triggered the wokies that he was talking about, who are turning out to be very intolerant of diversity of thought. Perhaps intolerant doesn't quite cover it. These people are the most vile, racist, anti-white people you'll ever come across and wholly incapable of leading a society. If you go, Mary Sue has a recent article on like books and graphic novels coming up. And you go through this list of a dozen books, in a certain percentage of them. So there's going to be a fair-skinned, light-haired, light-eyed antagonist who's going to enter the story and just disrupt the community. And you look at these, it's all written by like Pox Walks writers and Pox Walk storylines, and they have this little peaceful village, and this blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy comes into their town and disrupts the town. You look at them, you look at the writers, like, what's the color of this sky in your world? Because that's not what's going on in the real world, and wouldn't even be going on in your fantasy world. But if these wokey wokes continue to take power, they'll create starvation that puts Russia to shame, because farming, I suppose, is triggering to them, use of fertilizers or something like that. So we're gonna end the farms and build housing for migrants. Okay, well, what are you gonna feed them? That's really esthetophobic to even ask that question. Yeah, I think this is just history repeating. Russia and China went through this all before. Anyway, so apparently not only is this art triggering to these people, but even mentioning his name is enough to trigger them because he said that they were sensitive pussies. Some of the art of his was not politically correct for sure, but he used language. He also used language that upset the sensitive crowd. So to make sure we're on the same page here, he drew pictures that 50 years later the woke crowd can't tolerate. Some of them wanted trigger warnings on all these lessons, and some of the students didn't think his art should be taught at all. So this professor has a comic book art class. Crumb is covered in it, but the students who take the class want to censor her and for her to change her curriculum. So the students think they know better than the teacher on what she should teach. I suppose you can call this the racial grievance industry. Do these students in this woke art class really believe they're marginalized and oppressed? I have no idea. Maybe because to the sense that they self-identify as those people who are marginalized and oppressed. So sort of by their own circular reasoning, they meet the elements of their own definition, which I mean we can do also. We also identify as marginalized and oppressed people of color and whatever, because it's all, self-identity. To deny it is dehumanizing me. When you tell them these people back, this argument back to them, suddenly they want to shift from appeals to emotion to appeals to logic and rhetoric. It's like we can stay in the world. I have post-traumatic stress disorder from the oppression and marginalization. So I mean, it all sounds absolutely insane, which it is. It's sort of like a game children play where they create this fantasy world and the rules change as the story goes along. There's no internal consistency because the story isn't based on logic, it's all fiction. The weird thing is that all the other adults in the room aren't calling these people crazy, these adult children who are telling an art professor how to run her class. That I don't think bodes well for them or for the country. I mean, it's as if they can only exist in their own world where everyone is on the same page of this bizarre and ever-changing belief system of this Marxist struggle of varying competing hierarchies. Gee, suddenly 40% of kids are pox walks transferry otherkin. Yeah, I mean, do you think there might be an externality that explains that modality? What are you talking about? It's totally organic. It's just like left-handism. It asymptotically approaches a limit. Yeah, maybe. I mean, but left-handism is real. Anyway, it's as if they don't want to deal with reality, but they want to create a fictional overlay over the real world. Do they really believe this? I'm not entirely convinced of that. I think it might just be that they see an opportunity to exploit a system and they take full advantage of it. It's like a lot of times when you see these people have meltdowns in public, this woke pox walks otherkin, they're having meltdowns in people that they know they can manipulate. You're not having a meltdown with somebody who you look at, who you know has nothing left to lose and is just not is gonna physically hurt you. They don't do it in front of people who they know not to mess with. So they only do it to a certain crowd of people. So there is cognition going on there. They are running the calculus behind the scenes. So to take a class on comics, and when the teacher talks about some of the artists, the class pretends to be triggered so that they can go on Twitter and cry about an art teacher teaching about art. They want to change the teacher's words instead of just accepting that the teacher and artist have a difference of worldviews. What if the teacher doesn't want to change her words because she feels differently than they do? Will they accept her diversity of thought? No, of course not. She said words that they don't like, so she must be punished for those words that came out of her mouth. When you think about it, their respect for the word is like effing biblical, but more Luciferian than godly. I do think that some of these people are actually evil, but a lot of them know not what they do. You see them do the same thing to anyone they disagree with. They'll stop at nothing until they can censor people. But again, our Crumb is still the same old filthy hippy dippy from whenever, the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But now he's much further to the right than he used to be because the right, on average, has moved so far left, but the left has also gone so far left. So you have this flake from decades ago, but now he might fit in more comfortably with the right wing, including the far right wing, than the left wing. One of the shifts in my understanding is back in Crumb's day, the power of the people movement was more class-based and less race-based. But then as the movement got more diverse, it became more race-based because you could get something out of it. It was just a pivot point to manipulate things. And really, if you're at the apex of the hierarchy, then the first thing you want to do, like 2012 Occupy Wall Street, that is such a great example because it's such a brutal, brutal, in-your-face example of how a movement got subverted and corrupt. We're raging against Bank of America, Chase Bank, Wells Fargo. What happened? We're sponsored by Bank of America, Chase Bank, Wells Fargo. Oh, I thought we were raging against the machine. Hey, listen, buddy. All this equipment, this van, and this all the food and the signs and the supplies and the clothing. Yeah, it was all paid for by Soros and Bank of America. So we're going to go march through upper middle class residential neighborhoods and speak truth to power. So we're going to speak truth to like the 2 to 6% power. Yeah, that's right. That's right. What about the 1%? No, what about those private gated communities where the bankers actually live, or where our elected representatives live? Shouldn't we be taking this to literally our elected representatives, or the most wealthy, most powerful people on earth? Yeah, no, we're going to go through this upper middle class residential neighborhood where people have got BMWs 3 and 5 Series and Lexus and stuff. It's nice. It's a nice neighborhood, the professionals. But we're not actually, it's not the 1%, which is, I mean, really, it's like the 1/100th of 1%, right? But no, it's just a little bit below the top of that apex of the pyramid. Oh, that's weird, because to me, it looks like that's kind of seems like the definition of controlled op subversion and corruption. Like I'm not on the side of the left wing, but I am on the side of, hey, you want to go after the power centers? Hey, we can team up right and left. We can go after. Oh no, we just want to keep everyone busy and distracted. So you never actually you're just helping to grow the tall grass, so the snakes can do as they will, and you never actually go after them. Yeah, that's right. Back to that residential neighborhood. How do you march to a residential neighborhood and shine lights on the streets and think that you think you're speaking truth to power and you're rage against? You're in a residential neighborhood. Why don't you? I'm not advocating any unconstitutional activity, but seek peaceful redress of grievance against your elected officials. Oh, no, residential neighborhood. We're gonna knock over trash cans. That's insane. None of that makes sense. You're not accomplishing anything, but you're wasting your time. Yeah, that's like, if you ever feel like you're on a leash, and maybe look to see who's holding that leash. Uh-oh. Anyway, so if you're at the apex of that pyramid, the first thing you want to do is destroy the class struggle and convert it to a race struggle. So then you can have the different tribes endlessly fighting amongst themselves, wasting their time, and that way you keep them distracted from focusing on the ultra wealthy. The other brutal issue with art, even edgy art and stories, is that in a racially grievance-based society, you can't express yourself and your art in a society that weaponizes those racial grievances. So the next logical conclusion for those in the artistic community so affected is that it's only safe to express yourself among your own tribe, because they can't weaponize your tribe against you. An Englishman is going to be safe with a German or a Russian, but not with those who are more privileged than they are, which is how I mean, you can look at the hierarchy one way or another. It's all, is any of it real? Is an Irishman or an African more marginalized than a Swede or a Japanese? In their world, it's real. They don't consider the future, where artists ask, hey, all this hatred seems to be directed against European artists and writers. So, we need to set up our own collective so we're free of all these slings and arrows of these political commissars. Art subject to Bolshevik approval is not going to be very good. I see it pushed in left-wing magazines all the time. It finds a small audience. I suspect that some of these, even left-wing people of the light, artists and writers, would be safer in right-of-center groups who are not quite so censorious. Ultimately, it's a lesson the European liberals are slowly learning. That tribalism is essential. It's game theory. When groups are tribal, you must also be tribal to survive. This article about the microaggressions, let me just scroll through it. Goes on. Should do a word count. It's ridiculous. This is about an art class they didn't have to take, and it goes on and on. Where the people who are calling her istophobic are anonymous, but they're publicly naming her and calling her istophobic from the veil of anonymity. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, support channel, everyone, subscribe, star, or become a member here, and I'll see you guys all next episode.